Joey, officially welcome to the Wealth Juice podcast. I'm stoked to have you on the show today. You and I had a call a few weeks ago, and I know we both are talking to a lot of people, so we just realigned for like 10 minutes on our previous conversation. But one of the things that stuck out like so heavily to me in our last convo was just the fact that you have built up a lot of active income, but you have over $50,000 a month in passive income. And I think people hearing that number, they're like, I can't even, how is this even possible? Like, how did somebody like you, who was working in corporate America for a long time in the lending space, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
That you escaped it and you built this churning machine that pays you every month. So first of all, introduce yourself. Thank you for coming on the show. And we'll get into that, but I really appreciate your time.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not nearly as interesting as the actual story of how we got here. And I'll leave it at this. You know how people get to a machine that pushes out 50,000 a month? They get really focused on what does freedom look like, right? When you work in 60 to 70 hours a week, when you don't have a vacation because you have to take the next phone call from that person or they'll stop referring you, and you have to constantly play the politics in the office and, hey, so-and-so is my manager today, but who's going to be my manager tomorrow? And that's not freedom. I know what freedom doesn't look like. And then I know what freedom in my mind looked like. And that's what really drove me to make the change from something that was comfortable, right? When I say comfortable, it means known. And I think a lot of people in the 9 to 5 grind or even the business owner grind, they know what they're doing every day. And so they get stuck thinking, I don't want to take a risk on what if it doesn't work out? What if I make this change and it doesn't lead to where I can pay my bills or whatever that means? But for me, the change was so important. The freedom was driving me to say, I got to do something different. And I think if you don't ever get to that point, then that's why you can't imagine how to make the actual machine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I think it depends on your ambition level and your like comfort level and how that intersects. Because in our previous conversation, you were sharing like I was making $300,000 plus a year, like right. So like
Yeah.
people look at that and they're like, well, why do I need to go further? Or what's the purpose? But if you're taking calls on vacation and you don't actually have your freedom and you're working 80 hours a week, it's almost like what the hell's the point of making any money, right? So my thing here is if you could take us back to like maybe some of those moments where you were like in making 300 grand, the pivotal, like, I need to make a shift. When did you know? And then we'll get into the story of how you did it.
Well, I'll tell you, there's two stories that really stick out to me. One, and I mentioned it, is like being on vacation, having to take that phone call. Well, I have a wife and 5 daughters, Corey. So these are the people that I've been telling myself I'm working so hard for them, right? And I think if you're honest with yourself, you start to work for other things besides them, because it's obvious when I'm sitting at the beach, our favorite place to be, and I say, hey, girls, you guys go down to the beach. I have one more phone call. And then 4 hours later, I'm walking down that boardwalk behind the condo and they're walking back. They're done at the beach, right? And I'm sitting there walking towards them and they've just got this face of disappointment, of frustration, of, man, like, Dad, we're physically here. Like, we're in the same location, but you're like miles away. Mentally, emotionally, you're tied up in your work. You can't put it down. And what was different, I didn't know it at the time. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, yeah, I figured it all out right then. But I knew this wasn't right. I knew that something was wrong. And what I know now is I was the only asset at work, right? My money wasn't at work. I was actively at work trading time for dollars. And then the second thing I remember is my 4th daughter. I was taking her to school one day. This is a preschool. She's like 2 or 3. And she's sitting in the back and she's all cuddled up and it's kind of a cold day. And she's just talking. And when you have 4 other siblings, you have one-on-one time with Dad. Like, you can imagine the number of words coming out of her mouth. And she's just talking. Then she's kind of like shifts and she says, Dad, you gonna pick me up from school today? So she asked me that, and I immediately start thinking, well, she of course she knows I'm not going to pick her up. Like I don't even take her to school on a normal basis. Like this is a rare occurrence. I said, no, sweetheart, mom's going to pick you up. She said, why are you not going to pick me up? I said, well, I have to go to work. And she says, why you have to go to work? I was like, well, I have to pay for this car. I have to pay for our house, pay for the food that we eat. She says, we already have a house. We already have a car. We already have groceries. And it sounds like a very simple conversation because it was, but for me, it was ridiculously impactful because I said, I have to go to work. And when I heard myself from her mouth, it made so much sense. It was like, I'm telling her that the thing she wants the most is time with dad, and I can't give it to her because I'm the only thing at work. So those two things really challenged me to say, okay, we got to get something different here. Like we a passive income strategy that reduces my need to be at work all the time. And that's what really set me off.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, Joey? I've heard this before, and I don't have kids, by the way. So having the perspective of somebody like you who has five daughters, I feel like I'm learning vicariously, like through other people, on what to do and what not to do, and because kids are coming in my next year or so, and I think, God willing, right? But my thing is, I've learned that the family that you say that you're doing it for never really asked for you to do the things that you think you need to do, right? So
Right.
to me, does that mean that's one of two things? Pare down my lifestyle enough that I can spend all the time I want with them. And maybe you have some things that you want, but not all. That's a way to do it. I think if that's your freedom level. But for you, you kind of went the opposite way. You're making 20, 30K a month from your job, just as not passively, but like working through your job. And then you're like, well, no, I actually really want to amplify this so I can spend more time and do more fun things or have a bigger lifestyle. Right. So just talk to me about that decision and then like what you started to actually do to implement passive income in your life.
Yeah, I would say that my mentor Nelson Nash would say that there's Parkinson's law, and it tells you that a luxury once experienced becomes a necessity, and your income will rise to meet your expenses, or your expenses will rise to meet your income. And I've experienced that, and I think most people would agree. So for me, it wasn't so much, hey, let's start cutting, cutting to get to this freedom number. But I think there's easy, like you said, it's definitely something somebody can do. I was more driven to say, hey, I got access to some cash. How can I just multiply it and create these cash flows? And and for me, it was I had to become an investor. And I will tell you this, I think our company exists because we have figured out that there's two things missing. For someone that says, hey, I have this vision to be financially free. I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I love the idea of financial freedom that he talks about. I'm encouraged, I'm like motivated, but what do I do now? And our company exists to do the two things that he doesn't provide in that book, or that you can't do really on your own. One is you have to get your cash flow system to mirror your end goal. And what I mean by that is, if you've started your career or your business or what have you, and you start doing things with money because you're thinking in light of retirement, like that's the idea everybody kind of is defaulted to. And then you get this kind of awakening and you say, wait a minute, I don't really want to wait until I'm 65 to start living. I want to start living now. I want to have freedom of my time today. Well, what you do with money has to change. You can't keep doing the same things with money in light of retirement and then expect to be free today. They don't coexist. And so our company helps people do that. I had started on that journey 4 years before and recognized, oh man, I've got access to a lot of cash. Now I have to become an investor because the cash, one of our clients said, once I got access to cash, it was asking me, what do you want to do with it? like as if it was a person. But the point is like you don't want the money just sitting there, right? Opportunities should find you if you have cash, and that's what I started to recognize. I don't even know what I would want to do with it, and it's because most people have never been trained. I was trained in the mortgage business. You have a background in real estate, but actually becoming an investor is a kind of a different skill set if you think about it. You actually have to become more pessimistic than optimistic. You can't just, which by the way, I'm a super optimist. I'm an entrepreneur. Like, hey, let's just grind it. Get through this. We'll make it happen. But to be an investor, you have to kind of go into it with the idea that, hey, this isn't a good deal and prove to me that it is versus like, oh man, sounds good. And then just jump in and lose all your money.
So if you've ever tried getting a mortgage, which I'm sure many of you have, you know how daunting and discouraging it can be of a process. The slow process, paperwork, being told no without any real explanation. One time we were even told that taking out a home equity line of credit on an investment property wasn't even possible. So that all changed when we were introduced to Neo home loans. What makes Neo different is literally how they approach lending. They're not just checking the boxes, they're legit problem solvers. They look at your entire financial picture and explore multiple angles, literally until they find a strategy that works. They helped us reposition our portfolio, pull out lines of credits to scale, and structure everything for long-term growth. And on top of that, their rates were some of the most competitive that we've seen. They just literally did whatever it takes to find a solution. For us, Neo has become our liability advisor. The same way you have a financial advisor on the asset side for the liabilities. If you're serious about building wealth through real estate, it's worth sitting down with them and getting your lending strategy dialed in. If you want to book a call with them, click the link in our show notes. Their team is unreal, but don't just take it from us. Find out for yourself. Have
Right.
you ever heard this, Joey, that the best salespeople get sold the easiest? Have you ever heard that? Okay.
100%.
So I'll give you like the reason why I'm saying this now. And this is the exact thing that I always tell people of like when you learn something, you have to actually then implement the change that you learned or you'll just repeat the same thing over and over again. I invest in a couple things now. I invest in real estate and I invest in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's become a newer thing for me to invest in, but within the last year. I only bring this up to say right now there's this sentiment around the ladder that it's gonna fail, it's gonna go to zero. It's all of these things that I remember hearing in 2017 when I put $5,000 in and sold after it dipped. And I truly, like, I remember doing it and it was at like 16K and I sold it at like 10. Like this thing doesn't work. I didn't understand. I didn't do the knowledge. I didn't understand how the asset class actually worked, similar to real estate. But now I'm so excited that people are saying it's negative, it's not going to work, it's going to go to zero. I'm getting it at a 45% discount from what it was in October. I don't know how much you follow Bitcoin, but I'm like really into it now. I say this because it's parallels real estate. When people say there's no deals out there, you can't buy, you do. I'm like, yes. Now I know as an investor, this is the mindset that you have to say. When they say buy low and sell high, it sounds great in your head until you actually see the low number. And then you know, this is actually my time to buy. I have to press go, I have to buy. Like real estate, when the prices are dropping or there's a recession and people say buy low, everyone says to buy low until you have the opportunity to buy low because you don't want to fall on a falling knife or have falling knives fall on you. But now I get it. Now I truly understand that that's when the real investor, like you said, has their time to shine. And you have to think a little bit differently than a W-2 employee. So I am all in on exactly what you're saying. I'm curious on like, what are some of the first couple investments that you made? Because we have a long way to get to the 50K a month. Like, what are the first couple things that you were like, I have to think like an investor. What am I going to do now?
Well, and I'm going to use this as a reason to also kind of give some tips for others, if that's okay. So the first thing is I think you should try to identify who you are as an investor. We call it the investor DNA profile. It's like a personality assessment, and it's shocking to me because most people jump to the actual investment, and they're like, "Well, what do you invest in?" And maybe I should do the same. Well, that's you're chasing ROI. You're chasing someone else's success, but you're a totally different person. Like I look at it as really we're made in the image of God, but we're actually made in a very unique way. Like you see the world a certain way, Corey. I see the world a certain way because of the way I was made and the experiences I've had and the resources that are at my disposal. And so for me, one of the things I really love is private lending. Because why? Because I was a mortgage lender for 11 years. So I can underwrite a deal. What's the collateral like? What's the borrower risk? What are the potential challenges with this deal? And I can tell you in a very short amount of time if it makes sense. Well, I did a couple of private mortgages right out of the gate, and they paid well. But I also realized I committed to like a 15-year time frame. That was way too long. And so I learned, thankfully, they refinanced me out in a couple years and I got my money back. But it was a little bit of like, I think I've committed to a long period of time. So I need to shorten the time that money comes back. Second thing, we got into actually, it's funny you said crypto. We got into um, Ethereum mining computers. And we bought these computers. They were managed professionally by, a third party. They kept them up. All we had to do was pay the power bill, essentially, and we got to keep all the Ethereum that it mined. Well, there was times, this is 2000, probably 18, 19. There were times where it went really low to the point where we were mining at a loss because of the cost of the of the power, but we still mined. And then it came back in, I guess, 2020 and beyond, and it started to really outperform what we were putting in it to the point where, it was very, very profitable. Fast forward after that, we got into short term rentals. We built a whole short term rental portfolio on an arbitrage model where we would rent the property and then put it on short term with an operator. We scaled from 1 unit to 27 units in about 18 months and super profitable. And then we decided, well, we actually don't really love this business as much. And we feel like there's a little bit of threats from regulatory and all that. So we sold it to our operator and he's been paying us owner finance note ever since. So we have another 6 months till he pays us off. Um, After that, we got into a land flipping business. So we are the capital partner in a 70-30 operating partner split. The partner is the one that runs the day to day. They buy properties at 20, 30 cents on the dollar. They sell them raw land now to retail buyers on owner finance notes. And that business now, since 2020, has grown to about 38,000 a month in note income, which we get 70% of that. So that's one of my favorite things we've ever done. And by the way, I could get into all the other things, but I don't want to wear you guys out on all the details. But those are kind of the steps that we took early on, and had some massive wins, and we've had our plenty of losses, which we share on the podcast every month.
I think that the W-2 mindset, most people are in a mindset of like, well, you just said this comfortability. I don't want to take risks. And you did that for a long time. I don't know what you were doing with your money. Was it just investing in maybe a 401k or an IRA or something like that? But how did you reason why I'm asking this question is I'm curious how you went from the shift to try all these different things, like in your head, like I could do land flipping, I can do Airbnb arbitrage. It sounds like you like almost transformed into a different person who was way less risk averse, because I have conversations with people every day. I'm like, you just need to get a couple rental properties, not because you're going to live off of your rental properties, but because those rental properties are, you're going to be able to play real life Monopoly and trade up and your cash flow is going to grow. But getting people to even buy a rental property coming from the W-2 mindset is like, it's too risky. I don't know this. I don't know that. And I give them the roadmap. I show them how to do it. But you went from W-2 to like, I'll try any of these businesses. Let's go. How did that happen for you?
Well, again, here's a tip for anybody that's in the same boat I was. I was that person that was just blindly putting money in 401ks and IRAs. I didn't like doing it, by the way. I felt like it was risky and I didn't understand what I was actually investing in, but I didn't know what the alternative was. There was no wealth without Wall Street at the time, and there was no alternative. And so I was just like, well, I mean, just that's the default. So I had turned off the investor mindset, like that part of your brain that is you can train to do this. And so then fast forward, I start this whole cash flow system, which is what, again, that's our first step. And I started doing this for over 4 years. We actually base it off of the infinite banking concept, if you're familiar with that concept. And so here I am putting tons of money into this system, and it gives me access to it. Compare that to 401ks and IRAs. I had no access, so I didn't even think about what to do with it. This is now in my control. And as what I was telling you before, it starts begging me, hey, Joey, what are you going to do with this? And that's when really Russ and I started the podcast in 2017, because guess what? We had taught all these other clients the same cash flow system. They start putting money, doing the same things. And they're like, hey, guys, what would you do with the money now? Because they had the same issue. And so we started the podcast to start saying, how can we scale our education and start having the people who are doing passive income at a high level? What are they doing? And that's why we went from 2017 to almost 2020 with very little actual activity. We were just educating ourselves. And so the tip to me is, one, educate yourself on this. You have to treat this. Investing is a skill. Investing is a worthy place to be educated in. But you can't just do it on the first deal that comes your way, put money in it and hope it works out. You have to actually take the time, build it out. And the second part, I think, the hack, and which is why I love what you guys do, is get a coach, get a mentor, right? We didn't actually have a direct one, but we were building those mentors by interviewing hundreds of people. And what we did is we filtered those down and we said, wait a minute, this land flipping thing, we've talked to him now twice. We've been to his events, and this is something we want to pursue. And then we started to figure out, how can we make it passive? Because it wasn't a passive thing to begin with. And the same with the short-term rentals. We started hearing enough about it that we were like, hey, this really matches up with who we are, what we would like to do. But how do we make it passive? We hired an operator, trained him, and then, it was off to the races. But those are my hacks: is you got to educate yourself, you got to invest in it. And the shortcut is to get a coach, which is why we do what we do on the investing side. Like, we built a 12-week course that literally guarantees you'll get your first $500 a month in passive income by the end of it, because we've looked backwards and reverse engineered it to where you save all the time and all the headache that we had to go through.
I love it. I love it. Let's talk about Wealth Without Wall Street and the podcast and the platform, and what gave you the idea to start that. It's one thing to be like, okay, I want to build passive income. Now you're sharing it with everybody. And I have preached this. I've shouted from the rooftops that starting a podcast was the single greatest asset that could have. I would be nowhere near our level if I had not started this and just tried to amplify other people's voices and put my message out there, and like you said, filter who makes sense for me to partner with, like through this, this filter, if you will. It's like I've had 370 podcast episodes. It's not like I'm partnering with 250 people. I'm partnering with two, right? So that has allowed me to, like, who fits my vibe. I'm curious about your take and why you started the podcast and how that's helped you propel your journey.
Well, to your point, I think the podcast is the greatest thing we've ever done. But the funny part, I'll be honest with you, we started the podcast on accident. When we first were doing this, I told you we were helping people build this infinite banking concept into their life, this cash flow system. We now call it the passive income operating system because we've built some architecture around it. But at the time, we had hundreds of clients, and we were all local here in Birmingham, Alabama. And so we would do meetups and stuff, but only a few people could make it here and there. And we had this problem. We said, wouldn't it be great if we could have a conversation like we're having right now, but everybody, our clients, could hear it? Because, we'd have a great meeting with somebody in our office, and they would be the only person that heard it. And so we were like trying to solve that. And one of the young guys in our office, he was doing marketing for us at the time, he said, you guys need to do a podcast. We're like, what's that? Literally, we had to look it up because we did not know what it was. And we said, okay, well, we'll just record these conversations and we'll send it out to our client base so that they get the whole story. Sounded good. Literally, Corey, we did not know other people could hear it. It was like we thought we were just doing a recording and sending it out. So then 6 months into us doing the podcast, we have all these people from Massachusetts, Maine, Rhode Island, New York, California. They're calling us, hey, I heard your podcast. Could you help me do that cash flow system you guys are talking about? And we're like, who sent you the podcast? Literally, we were that
Oh, you
dumb.
put it on like you didn't even realize it was on Apple and Spotify and in the podcast world. You just thought it was being emailed.
Well, I knew it was on the platform, but honestly thought they couldn't access it without us sending it to them for some reason. I mean, this is just how naive we are. And so we start getting people all over the country like, hey, can you help me with that? We're like, yeah, I guess so. I didn't think about it. So we become a remote company overnight. We start hiring coaches because we couldn't do it all of ourselves. But the whole idea was literally the reason we started to help our clients understand what to do with their new system because we were learning, we wanted them to learn alongside us. And the outcome, which was unexpected, is we got educated as investors. And then we, to your point, we identified the one, two, three places that really resonated with us. And we said, well, we're going to take action on these because now we've heard 100 ideas, but three of them really stick out to, so let's start taking action. Now that has led to almost 21 different income streams now. And I don't necessarily advise people to do that, by the way, because it's a lot. But find the one or two and go deep and then start to maybe diversify out. But anyways, that's the story behind the podcast.
Hey, let me pause the episode real quick. Let me know if this sounds like you. You're making six figures, you're climbing the corporate ladder, investing in your 401k and your Roth IRA, and maybe even a brokerage account. But deep down, you're asking yourself, is this really it? Like, am I just going to do this thing for the next 30 years and hope to retire in my 60s? That was exactly us just a few years back. We were curious and excited about real estate, but overwhelmed and without a roadmap. If you fast forward to today, we've built a portfolio of over 80 cash flowing units and grown our net worth to over $2 million. We made it our mission to help busy professionals like you take that same leap and start building generational wealth for yourself and your family. That's exactly why we created the Wealth Juice Inner Circle, a private real estate investing community designed to help you get your first rental property under your belt in as little as 90 days. Inside, you'll get direct access to us, our full investing network, private off-market deals, and our exact playbook, and a community of investors who are closing deals every single week. That first property changed everything for us. We always talk about it. It was the true foundation for building generational wealth. And honestly, if we had access to something like this when we first started, we'd be 10 times further along by now. So if this sounds just like you, click the link in our show notes and schedule a call with me. Yes, me. I'll be taking the calls. We'll go over your goals, map out a plan, and get you ready to close your first deal. Let's get it. So yeah, go deep before you go wide. Learn something, learn a skill, get really good at it before you
For
diversify. It's
sure.
kind of like that thing where people say, "Oh, every millionaire should have 7 streams of income." Sure, they should, but they should really get good, become a millionaire off one or two, and
Yeah.
then diversify. So talk to me about this. If you could give it in, if you could talk about it in 3 to 4 minutes, the high level of what the cash flow system is and how it operates and how it works. And if people want to learn more about it, they can go to your website. It's with wealthwithoutwallstreet.com // wealth juice. Actually, you have a whole page. I didn't even realize it before we started talking. So just tell us about like how the cash flow system works at a high level.
Yeah. So really quickly, number one, on that webpage you just said, there's a free download of the webinar that explains this in great detail. And you can visualize it. So if one, I think audible versus visual is important for this sort of thing. But the key thing is kind of going back to what I said before. When you are no longer concerned about retirement, you're concerned about when your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses today, you're going to do different things with money. The biggest thing that we find is people are putting money into money traps, right? They're putting money into 401ks. They're putting money into the stock market. They're putting money into home equity by paying excess money towards their mortgage. They're doing things like gold and silver and putting a bunch of cash in checking accounts and savings accounts. These are all places that are not helping you get to financial freedom. And I can prove it to you with one idea. When you put money in a 401k, Corey, does it produce a passive income today?
No,
Does it reduce a monthly expense today?
Not only does it not do that or create passive income, you're creating the bank's passive income with it.
They're making passive income today off of yours because they're going to collect fees no matter what the balance goes up or down to. You're right on. So it's a if I put something into a money trap, that means it's not producing passive income or reducing a monthly expense. That means I can no longer contribute. I'm out. Right? It doesn't mean 401k is a bad place to put money, but only if I'm looking for freedom, I'm never going to put money in there. And then we just help people to identify those places. And we say, by the way, the alternative is what banks do. Banks put billions of dollars, not and they put it into real estate, but they put almost twice as much into cash value life insurance. And the reason why they do it is because it's liquid, it's creditor protected, and it grows tax deferred and is accessible tax free. And it actually perpetuates over generations because it feeds itself through death benefits that are also tax free. But the real critical thing, this is the cash flow difference. You and I, let's just say you and I are investing alongside each other, Corey, and you go buy a rental property with cash. And I buy the same rental property, the one next door, same price, everything, with my cash value life insurance. But I take a loan against the insurance company's money. My money is the collateral. I take the insurance company's money and I go buy the same property for the one next door. Do you know in 30 years, I'm going to, even after paying interest for the use of their money, I'm going to have 28% more cash than you do. And that's not to mention, that's just the next 30 years on one property. Well, if we're doing multiple properties, we're building a portfolio of passive income assets. I'm going to have multiplied that over and over. Here's the so what of it. I tell investors this all the time. My cash flow system will 4x your cash system. Like, let me say that again. You can buy the same property, but if I add this one step by putting a different vehicle in front of me buying whatever those portfolios are, I'm going to 4x the cash that I put into it. That means I get the cash growth and the assets. You only get the asset. And here's my question to any investor. Would you rather get the asset only or 4x your cash and the asset? That's what our cash flow system does. And so that's what makes you say, okay, I have this awesome Ferrari. Now I got to get it investing in the right things. And that's why we built both the cash flow system and the passive income lab is what we call it, the cohort to teach you to be an investor.
So I will self-admittedly, I'm so wet behind the ears as it relates to life insurance and like overfunding whole life policies and some of the infinite banking strategies. Ryan has like so many times been like, dude, you got to do this. And it's just another thing that I just haven't done. Right. And
Right.
I have conversations with people like you that are like, man, I should really think about this at a high level. Just explain this to me like I'm the idiot that I am. If you are drawing off of of your policy, essentially, are you drawing funds out of the potential cash value but not the value of the dollars that you put into it? You're drawing off future dollars. Can you just explain this to me I'm a 5-year-old?
Man, first of all, great question. And it is not a dumb question because here's the part that blew my mind when I first learned about this. You're putting premium dollars into an insurance policy. Well, we've learned about premiums. We've always thought of them as an expense, right? Because when we're buying a term policy, that is a dollar that goes towards nothing. It's just as an insurance. If something
Like
happened,
getting
I
car
died.
insurance, essentially,
Right,
right?
exactly. We always see a premium as an expense. Well, when I put a dollar into a cash value life insurance policy, the way we're talking about, a large percentage initially and then more than what I put in gets credited as cash value. So the first year, I don't have access to every dollar. But over the time, I mean, we've now had policies that are 15, 16 years old. So we've seen a lot more than the guy that's just peddling insurance today, right? For the first time. We've seen the effects of this. When I put in a dollar now, it kicks off more than $2 in cash value. I can go to the insurance company. Let's just say, I'm going to give you an example. I got $500,000 of cash value in a policy, and I need 100K to go buy this next rental property, whatever it is, right? I don't take the 100K out of the 500K that I have. I go to the insurance company and they have a general fund, which is separate from my money, that they need to get it to work. So they lend me the 100K as my 500K is a collateral, which they're going to tie up 100 of it with a lien. Okay. They're going to put a lien against it for that amount, which technically reduces my death benefit. Okay. So if I have 500K of cash in my policy, I may have a $2 million death benefit. Just as a guesstimate here. Well, if I take a 100K loan, they're going to say my death benefit's no longer 2 million, it's now 1.9 until that loan is repaid, and then it goes back up. So that's the kind of mechanics of it. But here's the crazy part. When you borrow against your cash value, the insurance company, they give you an interest only loan, again, against your cash value with their money, and it has no structured payments. Okay, so I take that 100K, and let's say I'm doing a flip. I don't know, whatever you're doing, and I'm not going to get any cash flow from this for 8 months. Well, I borrow the 100K, I have no payments. And at the end, if let's say it took a whole year, they're going to send me a bill that says, hey, here's your cash value. Here's your outstanding loan of 100K. And the interest that is accrued, let's say it's 5%, it's $5,000. Do you want to pay the 5,000 or do you want to roll it to next year? So you have ridiculous flexibility with this, but you pay that back and now it's available again. It's just like a line of credit, but it's a line of credit through the insurance company using your collateral, which is no different than a home equity line of credit, except that it has better terms, better payments, better structure. And so I don't know if that gives you answer your question fully, but that's how I think about it.
It does answer my question. Basically, I'm curious on the terms versus, like, for example, I have a home equity line of credit right now, 6.75%. It's great because I can get a better return. I have it maxed out almost all the time because I'm always investing it into a real estate project, or I'm buying some sort of investment with it that gets more than 7%. So are the terms like better than what they would be for a home equity line of credit?
Well, here, let's compare it. So home equity line, by the way, I have that too. Home equity line, first of all, here's one of the big differences. If for some reason we go into a recession and the value of your home drops and you've paid down your line of credit, who owns the ability for you to pull it back out?
The bank or the
Exactly.
mortgage company. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
In 2010, this is no lie. I'm sitting at Wells Fargo, and this old lady comes in and she puts a letter on my desk. And she's like, hey, Joey, I'm trying to understand what happened. Like, what's this about? And her letter from Wells Fargo says, this is so and so. Your home equity line of credit was 250,000, now is 50,000. And she said, I thought this was my equity. I said, well, it is your equity, at least what they think your equity is. And they are the ones that draw up the requirements of what you can have access to. So there's a big difference because the equity in your house is not technically yours. It is someone else's. They make the terms. They give you the payment requirements, right? So compare and contrast, a life insurance contract is a guaranteed growth contract. It can't go backwards. It never will. It only grows up towards your death benefit. So the insurance company will never reduce your available funds, and you doesn't have any payment. So if I borrow the home equity line of credit, they're going to tell me my payment's due next month. And they're going to tell me if it's a balance payment. They're going to tell me if it's interest only, if it's an amortized payment. Like, they set those terms and they can change it at any time. Versus the insurance company, they have an interest only, no structured payment. I can get it, I can pay it back when I want. and my death benefit is their ultimate liability. So that's why they're willing to do this. This isn't a loophole, right? It's not like, hey, this crazy redneck from Alabama figured this out and is like, hoping nobody finds out. This is just the way it's built, and just most people don't know how that it's possible.
So was this the how you were able to get started in when you were like just realized, okay, I need to go get passive income? The first way that you were able to fund it was through this insurance policy that you already had, or did somebody tell you, hey, you need to take this out and then go? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, before I understood anything about passive income, I learned this strategy and I knew it was better than what I was doing with the stock market and 401ks and IRAs and that. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I just knew I wanted to put it in my control. So I did that for 4 years and had built like almost $250,000 into this system. And then I left the mortgage business cold turkey, making 300,000 to zero, and realized this is my chance to now start putting that money to work. And so that's what that set me on the journey of education and then finally taking action.
Love it. So when you get to a place where you're making $50,000 a month in passive income, my question then becomes, what are your goals from here on out? Like, where are you trying to get to? Is it more about showing others the light, right? Showing them the way. What does 2026 and 2027 have on the horizon for you, Joey? And like, where are you trying to get to with this business? And do you have a passive income number of 80K a month so you can get to 1 million a year? Like, what is that? What does that look like?
Well, and first, this is a shared number with me and Russ. So I want to be clear on that. I don't want to like try to be, crazy about it. But we would love to get to 100K, but combined, because that's like, just another, threshold for us. What you start to find though is some of the things that were really working 2 years ago maybe have backed off. Some of the things that weren't working 2 years ago have come back up. So there's kind of like this ebb and flow, if we're being honest about how it works. We're also trying to figure out, well, what are the things we need to go deep in? And one of those is like that land business. We found that it's one of our favorite things, has a very scalable, it's easy to scale. And so it's something we want to continue to do more of. There's some things that have unnecessary variables in them, that we're just like, this doesn't make sense to keep going down this path, but we don't want to necessarily unwind it immediately. And so we're definitely, rethinking some of those things. But I think the ultimate is, to your point, we want to keep bringing to light what is working. We want to keep looking at trends. We want to keep looking for other ways that people in our community can win. And if we can prove it out ourselves and not just take somebody's word for it, kind of thing, that's also valuable to us. In some cases, those things have burned us, to be honest. But at least we're able to talk about it. And so people don't maybe go down the same path.
I find that the conversations that I have with people talking about the mistakes that I made allow for this more like humbled spirit, and people end up trusting me a little bit more. Like, I'll tell you when I screwed up, like, and this was a bad idea. And guess what? I think it lends um for you and the people around you to be more willing to make mistakes if you're willing to share the mistakes that you made. And I think that's an important aspect of this. If you're on a podcast every day talking about how great you are and all the good things that you've done, I just think it ends up being like, like you feel more robotic about that. So
For sure.
this kind of leads me to one of my last questions, and I'm curious. Are you able to pick up your daughter? It sounds like you're able to pick up your daughter from school now, which is great. But what's the why behind all of this? I mean, it sounds like you kind of mentioned it with the family and being able to spend time with them. Is that what really continues to drive you today? What gets you out of bed every morning doing what you do now?
Yeah. So, number one, I now get to work from home. My wife homeschools our kids. I'm involved in helping one of my kids learn to read. Uh, Two of my kids I've helped, or really three of them, I've helped with math. And that's like my thing I own. I help coach them on that. And so I'm involved on a daily basis at a pretty deep level with them on their education, which is important to me. And it wouldn't be possible with my old career, my old lifestyle. The second thing is I don't start work until roughly 10, leave about 5. Yeah, this by design, less by requirement, and don't work on Fridays 9 times out of 10. So, like for instance, one of my daughters, she's a senior this year, and rather than give her trig, which was one of the options, we focused in on what we call career math, and I got to spend 8 or 9 weeks with her going through a syllabus that I created on all the things that I wish I had been taught. Like, what is the savings account versus a checking account? How does a debit card work versus a credit card? What kind of credit cards are there? How did this mortgage work? How does that mortgage work? What's the true cost of buying a house versus renting? What's like, how does this infinite banking thing work? And what sort of passive income ideas really work for you? Well, now we did it on the golf course, by the way, which is also what I love. So we got to have flexibility with that, but also focus on what's really important. And now we're talking about she's doing a vending route for me, and she's going to take that over after she graduates. She bought a car that we have an operator running on Turo that kicked off like $750 for her last month. Like, she's learning some of these passive income ideas and things that she can do right away. And I'll tell you what is driving me now is just that, is how can I pour into them? Because one of the biggest regrets I would have is learning what I know and having learned what I know now and not passing that down to them would be ludicrous. It's like, I spent all this time and effort to learn this, and now I'm going to ask them to go through the same thing. Like, why wouldn't I shortcut it? Right? That's what a coach does. Like, that's what you guys do when you mentor people. You're taking the guesswork out. You're helping them compress time, or I've heard people say compress or collapse time, and I love that. That's what I want to do for my daughters. I want to set them up to where, and I want to be freed up. Be honest, when they say, "Hey, I'm getting married," and their husband wants to learn this stuff, like I want to disciple them in this. Like, I want to pour into them, because that to me would be how I could impact generations within my family.
What I love about what you're doing is there's been this challenge that I've come across with people that are wealthy, where they say, one of the biggest problems that I have now is that I had to fight for my wealth, and I now I'm wealthy enough that my kids don't have to fight for it. So to just pass down the dollars and pass down that legacy, if you will, doesn't actually help them become great people and forge through adversity, and none of that has to happen. So the fact that you're able to homeschool and teach them the things that you didn't learn in school, but then let them go make mistakes and fail and get bumps and bruises, I think is like, it's one of the strongest whys that I've ever heard anybody share on the show, because I, I'm not going to knock the school system completely. I understand, like, from a holistic America level of why the school system is the way it is. We can't teach everyone to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't make sense. But
Right.
I also think there's so many gaps in just teaching people how to be employees, because it will keep you stuck at some level. So the fact that you can have that flexibility to homeschool your kids, I'm sure they don't even know the value that they're getting from it yet. And they'll learn one day, like maybe in their 20s, or they'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I learned all this stuff. They just think it's maybe second nature. So
Normal. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I want to commend you for that. I think that's so awesome. It gives me ideas of what to do in the future. So um, this has been great, man. I really appreciate your time. I know you have a call coming up at the top of the hour. So if people want to learn more about you, your story, potentially get mentored by you, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, if you just go to that page we mentioned earlier, wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/wealth juice, you get access to some free stuff, giveaways, some quizzes, things like that to help you know where you're starting from. And all of my contact info is on there. So please, yeah, reach out to me there and let me know you heard Corey and I talking on the podcast. Always love to know where you come from and how we can support you.
Love it. Appreciate you, Joey. Thanks so much. I think we're going to do the reverse of this. I'm going to come on your podcast in a couple of weeks. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, can't wait, man. Thanks.
Before we wrap this show up, I want to leave you with this. If you're listening to the show, chances are you're doing pretty well in your career. You're making maybe six figures. You're putting money into your retirement accounts, maybe stacking some cash in a brokerage account, but you're still waiting for that next level. And here's the truth: waiting just costs you time. Every month you're on the sidelines is another month you could have had a property paying you and another step closer to financial freedom that you didn't take. Ryan and I know this because we stayed on the sidelines too long. We talk about this sometimes. We had the money, but not the guidance. And once we finally got our first property, everything shifted. It was the catalyst that built our entire portfolio and ultimately gave us freedom. And that's exactly why we built the Wealth Juice Inner Circle, to cut out wasted time, just give you the exact blueprint and surround you with a network of people who are closing deals every single week. So if you're tired of waiting and you're ready to finally get your first deal, click the link in the show notes and schedule a call with me. Let's map out your strategy and get you moving before another year slips by.